Hello, I'm Chuck Wolfe, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolfe Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching.
And this is Chuck Wolfe, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Good to be back with everybody. Hope you enjoyed the last time that I had a radio show on in the month of August, and you got to hear me interview someone who is a contemporary of mine, a colleague, who is quite famous in the field of psychology and in emotional intelligence, Richard Boyatzis. If you missed the interview, hopefully you get to hear it on SoundCloud. It's also on the Public Radio Exchange, by the way. And helping people change was the topic. Richard is a really, really interesting fellow, incredibly smart, has published an enormous number of articles, has been extremely successful in business as a leadership and management consultant, and has been wonderful in teaching many, many thousands of people how to be effective coaches. And one of the stories that Richard told was about his experience growing up in New York. His family was Greek immigrants, and when he got to the States as a young boy, he had a Greek accent, and for whatever reason, he said that it caused him to be put in special needs classes. And Richard was one of the smartest people I've ever met, but because his accent threw people off, somehow his difference caused the schools to think that maybe he wasn't able to keep up with the other children. Eventually, when they realized how smart he was, they passed him a grade or two ahead. And today is a day for many people who are beginning school. And so I want to just say to everybody who are parents or grandparents who have children going to school for the first time today or this week, congratulations. It's another new year, another exciting beginning to the next chapter in those children or grandchildren's lives. And perhaps we can talk a bit about that on today's show. For those of you who are regular listeners who are tuning back in, I just want to say thank you so much for your for listening all these years. This is my 10th year I've been doing this. Again, the show's called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. And for those of you who might be new to the show is all about helping people deal with challenging situations. It has occurred to me over the years, I've been in my professional practice, as I also do leadership coaching. I've done career coaching. I've done life coaching. Mostly I do leadership coaching and professional speaking, and I also do a lot of training and development. And I'll talk a bit about that today because I've done some interesting research for some of the more recent engagements I've had, and I want to share some of that with you. It's really fascinating, I think, some of the work being done around leadership. But today I also want to just emphasize that I'm excited because I have two grandchildren going off to school. Well, one starting school today. The other, my granddaughter's a little younger. She's starting in a couple of days. It's just such an exciting time. It's and I think it's interesting what happens when a child goes to school. And because this show is all about helping people to deal with the emotions involved in challenging situations, it's also useful to talk about emotions involved in joyous situations. How do we maintain the excitement and the early stages of engagement that begin at the start of every school year and often don't last? Not all children like school. Many don't. And what are some of the things that we can do as a community, as parents, as grandparents, as friends, aunts, uncles, that could help our children stay engaged in school? It's an interesting topic for today if you care to call in about it. Again, I want to talk to you today, though, about emotional controls and how they're being seen in leadership, and I'll spend a moment doing that with you. But sometimes people have been waiting for me to return to the radio, be live on air, and to call right away. So I'd like to give the phone number out pretty quick too, because the show's about people calling in and getting some help for some of the situations that they may face in their life where they're challenged. And so often I find when people are stuck, when smart people are stuck, good critical thinkers who can't seem to engage in problem solving around a particular issue, it seems to me most often that something emotional is happening that's preventing their critical thinking skills from kicking into gear. And so I like to think about this emotion roadmap I created as a strategy, a template, a process, a methodology that helps anyone and everyone be smarter about thinking about solutions to really challenging situations that have strong emotions in play. And the curious thing is we're always feeling something emotionally. Everybody, all of you who are listening right now, have some feeling. You may not be thinking about that feeling, though, until just now when I've called your attention to it, because most of the time we don't think about our feelings. But our feelings, interestingly enough, do drive our thoughts. And our thoughts drive our behaviors. It's sort of interesting how it all works together. And I like to help people untangle their situations by listening to a little bit of what's going on in your life that's confounded you, caused you to be uncertain about how to proceed, and then help you by saying, what is it that you're feeling? Right now, what is it you're feeling about that situation? And if there's anyone that's key that might be involved, what is he or she or perhaps they feeling? And are those feelings helpful? As part of my professional practice, over the years I've become an expert in an area called emotional intelligence. And in this area, we've learned some things about emotions, some of which we may have known before, but some things that are pretty unique. The most unique aspect, I believe, is this idea that certain emotions are better suited for particular tasks than other emotions. And once we grasp what that actually means, we can ask ourselves, when we've got a challenging situation, are we feeling the right emotion for this situation? Or is there a better, more ideal feeling that if we could make magic happen, we'd rather be feeling at this point in dealing with that task? And is that true for the people that are key as well? Are they feeling ideally what we'd want them to feel? Or are their feelings potentially harmful, or if not harmful, maybe just obstacles and neutral and at least not helpful? And is there a more ideal feeling that they could be feeling? And then the idea of a roadmap is, how do we get from what we are feeling to what we want to feel for ourselves and for others who might be key to what we're trying to get done? So those of you who are regular listeners have heard me say this before, and I hope you're really getting this. And if you're waiting to call me, I'm going to give you the number now. I'll say it a couple of times. And if you're ready to call in, I'm all set to take your phone calls. And if you don't call in right away, then I usually have something prepared to talk about. But the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And again, the reasons you might call: something to do at home, something to do at work, something to do with your child going off to school and some concerns you might have, something to do with a colleague at work who, for whatever reason, doesn't seem quite right these days, and you're trying to be helpful. Something to do with someone at work who is annoying to you, and yet you still have to work with them, and you're trying to figure out how to manage the irritation or anger you're feeling towards that person. Or a difficult relationship with someone who you work for, or someone who works for you. Or a problem with a sibling, or a parent, an aging parent, or any parent. Or as a parent, something you're struggling with a child. We have our first caller. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Chuck, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
My name is Tammy. I'm calling because I have medical problems. I have a broken lymphatic system that the local medical establishment in New Haven, Connecticut, due to my financial insurance, will not address. I'm very upset about it because I feel that we should get proper assessment. If we can't even get the medical treatment, we should be assessed. I've been going to the clinic for over 10 years. It took a publication to give me the information about my situation. I appreciate you if you could tell me how I should deal with this without being upset all the time, because this aggravates my medical situation. I'm going to get off the phone and let you address it because I'm very upset with the medical establishment. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for the call, Tammy. You raise an interesting problem that has only to do with the emotion roadmap has only to do with what's going on inside your head. I mean, I assume that you've made a lot of call. I mean, you've dealing with this for some time, so I assume you've called government agencies. I assume you might have contacted social workers. Maybe if you belong to a religious group of some kind, if there's a mosque, church, synagogue, perhaps there's some way that you might get some help. Those, since you chose to just hang up, I can't really explore that with you, but I encourage you to go down those routes and just explore if there's some way to get some help that way. But that's not what you asked. So let me address what you asked. You asked about how can you keep yourself from being so upset with the medical establishment. And that's a different kind of question that if you think about what the emotion roadmap is, and I'll kind of walk through that for you, Tammy, and for everybody else, really, because what do you do when you feel like there's an injustice that's being done? Because anger is an appropriate response to injustice. So first of all, Tammy, if you feel there's an injustice, and it sounds certainly like you do, and that perhaps, without knowing more about your situation, just listening to you, it sounds like it is an injustice and shouldn't have happened and shouldn't be happening in the way that it's happened. And so I think my point is that it's right, it's correct to feel upset and angry about this. That's an appropriate feeling. Now, here's where it becomes complicated, because once you're feeling upset, that feeling should drive behavior to try to correct the injustice, and that has not happened, and it's been ongoing for some time. And since you personally are in no way able to change the situation, that upset feeling, that anger, justified at least in the beginning, is no longer helpful. So I want you to understand it is it is perfectly acceptable to feel upset based on what's happening. But at some point, you want to move on from upset, and that's what you're asking for help for. And I want to emphasize that it was certainly correct to feel the way you felt based on an injustice. Now, having said that, what can you do about it now? Because the upset feeling, the anger that you feel, you realize is complicating your situation and making matters worse. So this is a perfect example of when a feeling that you have that may have started out as an appropriate reaction and an appropriate feeling for the situation you face no longer is helpful. The feeling of being upset is no longer helpful. How do you change it? Well, the first way you change it is to ask yourself, what do you want to feel about it? Because every time something is a problem for you with this medical condition that you have, which may be every instant, every moment of the day, I don't know, or maybe it's only occasionally during the day. I'm not sure how often you experience pain or difficulties associated with the medical condition, but it sounds like it's almost all the time. And so as you experience that and your mind races to say, I wish that they would just help me out, and that makes you mad as soon as you have that thought, you want to get off that pathway, because what you recognize, Tammy, and why you called, is that every time you have that second thought in your head, I wish they would help me out and they're bad for not doing it. As soon as you have those kind of thoughts, it complicates the medical condition you're having. That's what you just told me. And so to address it, you recognize that as soon as you start to go down that path, you got to get off it. You can't have those thoughts anymore. The feelings of upset that you feel have to be channeled differently. When you have that upset feeling, you've got to find some way, and if you were still on the phone with me, or if you want to call back, we could explore what else you might do that would help you to change those feelings of upset to just a recognition of, this isn't going to change. I have to deal with it. I'm not getting help from other people at this point. This is something that happened to me. It's unfortunate, it's sad, and it makes me angry when I allow it to, but I don't want it to make me angry anymore. I want to change that. And instead, every time I think about it, I want to instead have some other thought that creeps into my head right away. And maybe it's the fighter in you, Tammy, you know, maybe it's something that I don't know you well enough, and we didn't spend time on the phone talking, but, you know, to understand what would work for you, because each of us are unique in the way we respond to things. So here's a question that you want to just spend some time thinking about. And it's the same question for everybody who's struggling with a feeling they want to change. The question is, if you don't want to feel the way you are feeling when certain thoughts show up for you, and in this case, Tammy, for you, it's upset. You don't want to feel upset anymore about no one helping. Have you ever in your life had the ability to control that? Not necessarily about this condition, but have you ever been upset before and found ways to calm yourself down and to let go of the anger? Because if we were still talking, I would have a chance to ask you that. And if there's any way that you may have had some success in the past, it's useful to think about how can you use the success that you experienced in the past around other times when you've been upset by managing to lower the level of upset that you feel to the point that you're not thinking about being upset anymore and not feeling upset anymore. Maybe there's something you can learn there. But that's how you have to think about this. You have to realize that every time you start to have the thought that these people should be helping me out and they aren't, immediately that upset feeling is going to get worse for you, and it's going to complicate your medical condition. That's what you've told me. And so when you start to have that thought, you want to shut it down. You want to say, I'm not going there anymore. That's not helpful. I talked to this guy on the radio and he said, it's not helpful. I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to think about something I enjoy in life. I'm going to think about something funny. I'm going to think about something I'm grateful for. Whatever might work for you, Tammy, is how you want to approach it. You got to find something that you can rely on that changes the dynamic that's been happening for you for lots of years. And if you can do that, I think you'll find some inner peace to the extent that you can. I wish you the best. So, for everybody, and for Tammy too, that's how the emotion roadmap works. You think about what you are feeling, whether that feeling is helpful, and if it's not helpful, what could you feel? What would you like to feel that would be more ideal? And how do you change from, in this case, being upset to feeling calm or feeling some contentment that you've mastered the ability to lower your physical pain because it's not going to be compromised anymore by allowing the upset feeling that you get when you realize that there's nobody out there helping with this to the degree that you think they should. And you recognize that, and you recognize that the upset feeling initially at one point was justified, absolutely justified, but it's no longer helpful. I'm not going to allow myself to feel that anymore because it just makes it worse. I know that now. And now when it pops up, I'm going to try to force myself to get in the habit of thinking about what I'm grateful for, what makes me laugh, What gives me some joy in life? Just somehow trying to change the thought process as it occurs so it doesn't lead to the intensity of the medical condition. That's the emotion roadmap in play, folks. So hopefully that's helpful to you, Tammy, and to everybody else. So again, if you want to call in, the number is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a minute. Two 336-9756. So, okay, just a second. Hi, this is... Oh, I'm sorry. That was my fault. I hit the wrong button. I apologize for that, folks. If you want to call back, I'll wait for you. It's 203-336-9756. The phone went through and I hit the second line by accident. Sorry about that. So I'll give you a moment. 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Chuck. I'm actually going to use a pseudonym. My
that's
name's
fine.
Abigail.
Abigail, that's fine, sure.
So the question I'd love your take on is actually about a workplace situation. I just got a promotion. I'm working more closely with the leadership at my company, directly with our CEO. It's a small business. So very few sort of layers in the hierarchy. So it's really just me and him. I've been doing a lot of work on my emotional state and my mental health. I'm a highly sensitive person and an introvert. So I've got a pretty good reading on people. I've got a good reading on him. So I find myself in a position where I almost have to manage him in a way and help him get to a place of making decisions that are a little bit separated from his own emotions and fears and ego that would be best for the company. What I'm seeing is a lot of the decisions he's making are fear-based and sort of a scarcity mentality. And it's really just preventing him from making decisions in a lot of cases, or what I think he's making poor decisions based on what his stated goals are. So I would love your take on, best ways to sort of help him and manage him in a way so that the results are best for the company overall. I'm managing a team of about 10 people with him, and it really affects morale there. So would love your take on all that.
Okay, Abigail. So do you have the radio on, by the way? There's sort of noise in the background. I don't know if...
Oh, I'm sorry. I am out in a store. I'm on my lunch break.
Oh, okay. So that's the noise. Okay. So what I would say, Abigail, is it's a couple things. The question is, you think that he seems to be basing some of his decisions on being fearful and not being confident in what he wants to do as a leader. And so the result is that there are some mistakes, I think, ultimately you're feeling he's making, and you're wondering how to influence that so he's not so fearful about what's happening. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's a good summary. Yeah.
Okay. And so one of the things that that happens when you're trying to change someone else's thought process is you want to understand as best you can why he's feeling fearful. I mean, so that's an important beginning, and I don't suspect that. I'm sure you have some thoughts about that, but it's always helpful to understand what's scaring him, and if there's some way that you can influence that emotion that's driving some of the thoughts. See, I believe emotions drive thoughts, drive behaviors, and so the behavior you're seeing, you've identified as being driven by fear. And so if you want to understand what to do about the fear, you got to understand what's creating it. So that's part of it. The other way you can approach that is to think about drawing him out about his vision of the future. And this comes from, I was mentioning in the beginning of my radio show, I was talking to Richard Boyatzis a few weeks ago, and I had on the radio his new book, Helping People Change. But he talks about the difference between compliance coaching and compassion coaching. Compassion coaching is based on getting a person to change, not because you tell him it's the wrong thing and he needs to change because you and others think what he's doing is wrong, but he begins to want to change because he realizes that his vision isn't being met by his actions. So if you can somehow engage him in talking more about his vision and about what he's excited about in the future for your company, how he hopes to grow the company, what he sees 10, 15 years out now for himself and for the company, that's a very lovely conversation for anyone to have with someone who's willing to listen and expresses interest in it. And then once you've got that dialogue between the two of you and you've sort of repeated it and summarized it and said it back to him, so the two of you are on the same page with what he's trying to accomplish, then when he makes a decision, you can ask him, how does that help us to get closer to your vision? And I think that's another way to think about him finding on his own that some of the decisions he's making right now are not particularly suited to getting where he wants to go. At which point he'll start to think, geez, I'm not actually, now that I think about it, I'm not actually sure that it does. At which point you can engage him in a conversation about, well, what else might we do that would get you closer and accomplish the same purpose? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of, the direction that I was thinking was the right way to go. And yeah, so really sort of engaging that future vision, and keeping that, I think, forefront for him. I know for like small business owners, when it's, it's just you and sort of your money invested in it, like everything is potentially terrifying.
Absolutely. Right. Okay. So that's a pretty clear handle on. So one of the other things you might think about then is he's at times terrified, panic-stricken a bit, and so and the feeling you want to replace that with is confidence in himself and in his company, you and the other people that work with him. Mm-hmm. And so some of the things that will help him to move in that direction are this expression of interest in his vision and purpose and what he hopes to accomplish over 10 to 15 years, really long term. You don't want to talk about the next year or two. And the reason for that is that because that raises all the fears. Because we don't have enough money, so I'm more thinking that this is what you want this vision of an ideal future, if you will. And then what are the ideal feelings we want to have? And even ask them, as you think about where we want to get to, what do you think the feelings are we all need to have here? Well, maybe we all need to feel highly confident we can do it. And let's talk about some of the things that are going to drive us to feeling highly confident. And get him to be the one to say these things. I think people, and it's hard not to do this, when you're working with him and you see what you think's the right thing to do, it's awful hard just to not tell him, hey, listen, what you're doing isn't right. Here's what we need to do. And even if you're right, it's really hard for the person in charge to hear that.
Yeah.
But if you can help him to come to the same conclusions or similar ones, or maybe, this is possible too. I'll call you Abigail. This is possible too, Abigail, in the sense that what he's driving at that you think might be a wrong decision, once you understand more about his vision and where he's going and how he hopes to get there, you might think some of the things you thought were wrong might not be. That's a possibility too.
Yeah, that's good to keep in mind too, for sure.
Right. So it's not assuming that you know, but that's why the idea of engaging him and more thoughtfulness around far out vision in the future. And this is Richard's concept. I like it a lot. And it pulls you forward instead of feeling like somebody's pushing you. And so that by asking him how he thinks he's going to get there, how we all need to feel, and what are some of the behaviors he thinks that are going to drive us in that direction, that helps him to kind of, you're not giving him advice, you're acting as a sounding board and allowing him to clarify his own thoughts and to see what he really needs to do and to understand how his panic at times is going to hold him and your company back. And he needs to, in your conversation with him, come to recognize when that's getting in his way. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And maybe you can help him with that by having this kind of conversation.
Sure. Great. Well, I really appreciate that. Just, going deeper kind of on that direction I kind of intuited would be the right way. So I really appreciate that, Chuck. Thank you.
You're welcome. And, it's one of those things where the more I don't know if you've ever had anybody ask you about your vision and what you hope to have happen in 15 years, but it's kind of a fun conversation to engage in for everybody that's listening, to think about, where do I want to be in 15 years? What's my vision? And am I doing the things that are going to get me there? We aren't always. So it's useful as a reflective kind of exercise for everybody to engage in it. But people love when somebody asks them those questions and really pays attention and really listens. And don't go in with the purpose of trying to change his behavior. Go in with the purpose of trying to understand what he's feeling, what he believes, what he hopes for, and how you can help him. And that will make it a very authentic conversation. And you don't have to be so skilled then. You just have to be helpful.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay?
All right. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thanks a lot for the phone call. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Well, okay. Thank you. Thank you to Tammy. Thank you to Abigail for calling in. Again, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. This is Chuck Wolfe. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut, Suffolk County in New York, and Suffolk County in New York's Long Island. And we stream around the world at WPKN.org, and you can listen to us on TuneIn Radio. And also, you also can simply get the app that is the WPKN app now. And finally, for my shows, at least for many of the talk shows on WPKN, you can listen on podcast. You can go to the PKN website and click on podcast, or you can go to SoundCloud or iTunes or Stitcher, and people got accounts there. You can type in Emotion Roadmap, and finally on Public Radio Exchange, you can hear a number of my shows as well. So the number to call is 203-336-9756. We had a conversation about a personal situation that Tammy was experiencing, and then Abigail called in about a work situation, how to help her leader be more confident in his vision and to exercise behaviors that will be supportive of that vision, and to somehow let go of some of the fears that he has right now. What's going on for you, and would you like to call? 203-336-9756. This is Chuck Wolfe. Well, if you don't want to call about a situation or a problem, do you want to talk about how you're feeling about your kids going to school today? That's an exciting feeling, I think, and I'd love to talk to people about how they hope to keep their kids engaged and caring about it and enjoying themselves and participating in schools. My children are all adults, and I have 3 daughters, and 2 of my daughters now have children of their own. One's just 1 year old, and the others are 4 and 8. And the 8-year-old just started school today. I'm very excited for him. He happens to really like school. He's good at it. He's smart, and he's a very kind young man who's not just interested in learning, but he's also interested in helping others in his class to learn too. He's really a great kid. And so he likes school, so that's kind of easy. But we do a lot of things to encourage him to enjoy school. And when I say we, his parents do quite a bit. I think my wife, as someone who has been a teacher in a high school setting and also been a professor in a college and a dean in the college, she also has floods their home with books she gets for the children. And he's a reader, and that's unusual these days. He likes video games too, but he loves to read too, so that's great. So what is it that you're doing at your home as a grandparent, as a parent, that is exciting to you and you think might help your children and grandchildren stay engaged in school? Got any thoughts about that? I'd love to hear them. 203-336-9756. I'll give you a moment. Well, we don't have takers on that topic. Okay, let me talk to you about something else. One of the other things I thought I'd like to talk about today is I'm doing some fascinating work these days. I'm working with Yale University right now, and I'm doing some educational development for them on the topic of emotional intelligence, why it's important and how to get better at it. And one of the things that I've been talking to them about is a new study that came out from Accenture. And Accenture is, some of you have been around for a while, knew as the company called Anderson Consulting. They were part of the Arthur Anderson firm, and they did leadership consulting primarily with the information technology communities. Although they also work with senior leaders who run organizations as well, not just in the IT departments. Accenture, in my experience, I've actually done some work for Accenture a number of years ago, filled with really, really bright people. They like to think of themselves as thought leaders, and often are. And they've done a research study that I thought was really fascinating. It took a look across lots of companies at what they call C-suite leadership. And those of you who aren't engaged in businesses won't know what that term means. C is like the letter C. Suite leaders are people that all have the C in their titles. So CEO, Chief Executive Officer. CTO, Chief Technical Officer. CFO, Chief Financial Officer. COO, Chief Operations Officer, and so forth. So that's what it means by C-suite. It means the top leaders in a senior team in usually large organizations. And they surveyed numerous members from that group about what they thought were the key skills necessary for success in today's world and in the future. So not past, but what do they think is absolutely critical today and in the future? And then they surveyed not just followers, which other groups have done. In other words, not just people that work for these folks, but they looked at the groups that were in talent pools. Talent pools are the equivalent of a group of people that have been identified for particular reasons that the organization has designated as high potential people. The people that have the ability to move more than 2 levels up in an organization. And if you don't know a lot about this topic, it's a little hard to say a lot about it without spending a lot of time. But to simplify it, just understand that these are the best and the brightest of the organizations that have been identified. And then Accenture's research went to those people. So it isn't just anybody. It's the people that the people on top think are the most important successors to them to keep their company going and being successful and thriving today and in the future. And they looked at the same set of skills in terms of how those people, how important the talent people felt the C-suite executive skills needed to be, which were the critical ones, and how and the differences between what the talent pool said versus the leaders said was pretty interesting. So first, the similarities are this. The highly talented people felt like C-suite leaders have to be brilliant at leading. Now, how you define leading could be different, but most of us get a sense of what leading means. It means the ability to create a vision, to understand the future, to understand the marketplace, to understand the products and the competition and the government regulations that are on the horizon. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to leadership on big organizations that you may not be familiar with. But the idea of these people, they know what's important, and they all agree leading is really important. They agree together. The other is coaching. The talent pool thinks that the C-suite leaders need to be outstanding at coaching people. Coaching them, for instance. I guess that makes some sense. But coaching in general, that they have to be really great at developing people in the workplace. Now, the C-suite people agree with that. So the 2 points of agreement, really strong agreement, at the top of the charts, and both groups felt like leading and coaching were critical skills. Now, the places where there was quite a bit of difference the most difference, in fact, in their study, this is really fascinating, was inclusiveness and empathy. Inclusiveness being the least valued skill of the C-suite group, almost the top valued skill of the talent pool. Now think about what that means. Inclusiveness. Inclusiveness means that the people in charge with the titles of chief make decisions by including others in the conversation. They don't make decisions alone. Now, that doesn't mean ever. It just means a lot of the time they're being inclusive. They're bringing people with them. They're expecting people to come with them and to speak up and to be part of a conversation if they're visiting with a client. They expect people to, when there's a critical decision to be made, they don't just do it alone. They bring in a group of people. Again, it depends on the situation and the circumstance and the groups, but people feel included. They feel valued. They feel like their thought process makes a difference. And the people in the talent pool felt that was one of the most important skills needed by the people with the title chief, chief executive, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, and so forth. But the people at the top think that's not important at all. Now, I think they would have thought it was really important when they were in that talent pool and they weren't yet chief. So it's curious about how that happens. But maybe they were raised in an organizational life and culture where they weren't included much on the outside either. But somehow they managed to rise to the top, and when they got to the top, they didn't feel like they had to include people either. In fact, they felt and believed that they're there to make decisions, tough decisions, and they don't need to, and they shouldn't even involve other people, include other people. That's their job. That's why they're getting paid the big money. So, I mean, it's not without some rational understanding of what causes the discrepancy, but it's a fascinating chart to share with a group of leaders and to ask, are you being inclusive? Right? Are you being inclusive? And one of the things that is noteworthy about working at Yale is one of my good colleagues. I can't call him really a friend. We don't socialize, but we do correspond and talk to each other on occasion. Peter Salovey, the Yale president, he is considered highly inclusive. Peter really gets this. So it's fun, talking about that at Yale. But the other one is empathy. And now empathy is a really interesting topic today, because if you read the business, online business forums or chat rooms or LinkedIn, what's trending, or Twitter, or you start looking at the word empathy, and it's everywhere. And what does it really mean? It means several different things. So let me tell you a little bit about empathy. But before I tell you about it, let me just tell you that, again, the people with the C in their title, the chiefs, didn't think empathy was that important. They didn't have it as low as inclusiveness, but they didn't have it very high either. And the people in the talent pool, their best and brightest people in their organizations, thought empathy was really, really important. So what is it? Empathy is understanding why people feel the way they do. Understanding what is motivational to someone. What is going to cause somebody to resist and refuse to participate? What is going to be off-putting? What is going to be insensitive? Knowing what behaviors cause what feelings. Understanding feelings. Empathy is understanding what you feel and why, and what others are feeling and why. That's intellectual understanding. Intellectual empathy. So you're not necessarily feeling what others are feeling, but you do understand what causes feelings and what is causing the feelings you're getting right now, today. How is that helpful? Well, let's say you're going to announce a large-scale change that is going to cause a lot of resistance in your organization and threaten a lot of people. People who experience change in organizations, their greatest fear is loss of control. They don't know what's going to happen to their career. They don't know what's going to happen to them, whether they even have a job sometimes, depending on the type of change that's being announced. They don't know who they're going to report to. They don't know what's going to happen to people they care about, maybe in their unit that they're very close to, or their peers. So there's a lot of fear driven by loss of control. Other reasons as well, fear shows up, but that's a big one. Now, so somebody who's really smart about feelings recognizes that before we make an announcement, they're saying to their entire senior team, go out and talk to all the people we don't want to lose. Our best people, our brightest people are going to be the ones who can leave more easily than others because they're so talented. If they don't like the change that's coming, if they don't see a place for themselves in the change that's coming, they're the most vulnerable in terms of us losing them. Others we might lose, but that's not so bad. We don't want to lose these people. And so one way, as somebody who's got intellectual empathy and understands the feelings that are going to be created, a strategy often used is to go out and talk to all the key people you want to have kept, who you want to remain loyal, and tell them that don't worry, we're about to make an announcement. Tell them as much as you feel you can about what the announcement is, and tell them they're safe. Not only are they safe, but you're going to look for ways to reward them and promote them in the near future, if not immediately. And then those people aren't at risk anymore, right? So that's sort of one of the ways of thinking about the emotion roadmap as a proactive tool, as something that gives you the ability to think about where am I going to hit emotional resistance in what I'm about to announce or the change I want to make, and how can I offset that or minimize it, and also make sure I keep the loyalty and retain the most important talent that I have on board currently. So that's an intellectual empathic approach. The other kind of empathy is emotional empathy. And emotional empathy is feeling what another person feels. Not the same as understanding what's driving it. So you might, for example, if you're really good at this, you might walk into a group of people who have just heard that there's going to be a large change in their organization, and without anyone saying a word, and you're just a visitor there, but you're someone who maybe you're a vendor who comes in somewhat regularly, and you walk in, and usually the room has a feeling of, some people are busy, some people are smiling, a few people are, working, really focused on their work. But you don't really think about the feelings because nothing's overwhelming, but you walk in today, and you have a sense of there's a panic in the room. And no one said a word, and yet as soon as you step into that building, you feel something quite different. You don't know why yet, but you feel something that's really fearful going on in the room. That's when you have emotional empathy. You feel what another person feels. And finally, there's empathic concern, and this is a little different because this isn't about feeling what others feel. This isn't about understanding what others feel. Empathic concern is about caring about what others feel. Caring about what others feel. And when you have a leader who cares about how you feel, who also might feel what you feel and understands why you feel what you feel, and does something about that in a positive way, you feel supports you in a meaningful way, you want to stay working for that person. I mean, there might be other reasons to leave, but this person is going to be a reason to stay when you have a leader like that. So that's the idea about empathy. Now, when you look at the research that Accenture did, they found that the C-suite people, the people with the chief in front of their titles, they don't necessarily care about all that. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody who didn't write this as a top important skill doesn't care about how others feel. It just means it's not at the top of their charts. But the people on the talent pool felt it was one of the most important things. Now, I don't know if that's changing because of millenniums and it's generational, or it's changing because of circumstance. We have a very full economy now. There's a lot more demand in place, and while not everybody is experiencing, a resurgence of financial well-being, a lot of people are better than they have been for years, and with full employment comes more opportunity, meaning that it's easier to leave than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago when there was so much downsizing going on in organizations. There's less of that today. Still happening, but not nearly to the degree. And lots of companies are hiring, and lots of good jobs are going unfilled because people don't have the right skills, or people who have those skills are already employed in other companies. And so people who are very skilled with skills that are currently needed, those people can pretty much pick where they want to work these days. So it becomes really important that when you're feeling a certain way about your confidence level, and again, these are the talented people that were surveyed. These are the highly talented, best and brightest of whatever organization. Those are the people that were surveyed. And they felt that, hey, you need to care about how I feel. That's really, really important to me. So there's a lot of learning here for people in charge of organizations, right? I mean, so two things that anybody who's listening that's a leader may want to think about is when I look at what I'm doing today, would I consider myself, if I was working for me, to be inclusive? Who in my group have I included in any key decisions recently? How have I included them? Have I included them just to have a conversation about something that didn't have that much meaning? Or have I brought them into the big decisions that needed to be made here? And if I haven't, do I need to do more of that? Is what Chuck's saying and what Accenture found really important? And have I thought at all about how people are feeling in my workplace? Not just the talented people, but anybody. Am I thinking about how people are feeling? Do I look every day at the people that work for me and I ask myself, how is each of these people feeling? Are each of them going to have a good day? Is something off with any of them? And if there is, can I do something about it? Even if it's just to go up to them and say, are you okay today? You look like something might not be right. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I don't mean to intervene. I just want you to know I care about you. I mean, who doesn't like someone to care about them? Now, some people might feel that's a little invasive and you're invading my privacy. Most people are going to say, thank you. I'm okay. I've got something going on at home maybe. I appreciate you calling my attention to how I'm showing up. I can put that aside. I need to put it aside so I can focus on what I got in front of me. And maybe you offset something bad that would have happened that day if you could do that. So, folks, I want to thank you for listening today. You've been listening to Chuck Wolfe, The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I want to thank Tammy and Abigail, and I want to thank everybody who tunes in all the time to listen to WPKN 89.5 FM. It's been a pleasure being here with you. Next week will not be a live show. I hope to have a show that will be really interesting to you. I'm hoping to tape it in a few minutes, but I don't want to tell you about it until I'm sure we got it. So tune in next week, and hopefully you hear a show you haven't heard before, and it's something that's really, really interesting. I hope all the shows are interesting, folks. Thanks very much for listening. Again, this is Chuck Wolfe. You're listening to The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. WPKN 89.5 FM and streaming on WPKN.org. Don't forget you can hear my shows that are podcast on either SoundCloud, Stitcher, or iTunes if you have an account, or you can also look at a number of my shows that I particularly liked on the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.